I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
This war on jokes must end. Will Smith didn't get kicked out of the Oscars for going Ike Turner on Chris, but Kevin Hart got kicked out of hosting it for a joke. Who are these people who say cancel culture isn't a real thing? Just among comedians who've gotten fired and lost gigs for exercising their freedom of expression, the toll is high.
Let's be real for a second. That Oscar slap wasn't just some wild celebrity moment that the internet memed into oblivion. It was a flashing neon sign screaming Hollywood has completely lost the plot. And not just because somebody walked up on stage and hit a comedian over a joke like we're living in a middle school cafeteria with a red carpet. It was the reaction after that made it 10 times worse. The standing ovation, the let's all pretend this is normal energy. The spineless clapping like trained seals vibe that told everyone watching, yeah, we'll excuse anything as long as it's the right person doing it. If you're here for the full breakdown, hit like and subscribe right now. Seriously, it helps the channel a ton. And stick around because this whole mess is bigger than one slap. Because here's the part people don't want to say out loud. That moment put a shadow over everybody else's night. You had people who worked for years, decades, grinding through auditions, rejections, low-budget gigs, humiliating meetings, and constant maybe next time energy, finally reaching the Oscars. That's the mountaintop in that world. And then bam, one selfish outburst hijacks the entire broadcast. Suddenly, it's not about the winners, the films, the performances, or the craft. It's about a grown man losing control on live television while millions watch. And everyone else awkwardly pretending they didn't just witness something totally unacceptable.
Cast a pall over everybody's shining moment last night. You know, a lot of people worked really hard to get to that place and to have their moment in the sun and to get their award for the really hard work they did. And it is no mean feat to go through all the stuff you have to go through when you're nominated for an Oscar. It's a gauntlet of devotion that you have to do. And you know, it was just a selfish moment that cast a pall over the whole thing.
And before anybody tries to do the whole well, emotions were high things stop. We can acknowledge someone's feelings without letting them use those feelings as an excuse to go feral. You can be hurt, offended, embarrassed, triggered, or whatever word is trending this week and still not have the right to walk onto a stage and put hands on somebody because you didn't like a joke. That is not a controversial statement in any sane society. That's literally the baseline rule we teach toddlers. Use your words. Which is why Jim Carrey's reaction hit so hard. He wasn't doing the polite celebrity thoughts and prayers dance. He said what a lot of normal people were thinking. That standing ovation made the whole industry look weak, like Hollywood has no spine anymore. And honestly, he's right. Because if that had been some random guy, some audience member who wasn't famous, security would have tackled him so fast, he would have been doing backflips into handcuffs. But because it was a beloved star, everyone froze. And that's the cool club illusion shattering in real time.
I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
There was some question today about if anyone else had walked from the audience and done that, they would have been escorted out by security or maybe even arrested. The police asked Chris if he wanted to file charges. They asked Chris, do you want to file charges? And Chris apparently said no, he did not.
He doesn't want the hassle. I'd have announced this morning that I was suing Will for $200 million because that video is going to be there forever. It's going to be ubiquitous.
The club isn't cool. It's just protective of itself. And the hypocrisy gets even nastier when you compare what Hollywood freaks out about. Physical violence on stage is weirdly tolerated. But a joke from years ago, career ending. That's where Bill Maher comes in with his whole the war on jokes must end thing. And look, you don't have to agree with every word Maher's ever said to understand the point. The punishment system is backwards. We're living in this era where words are treated like violence, while actual violence gets treated like an unfortunate misunderstanding.
Final rule tonight. It's time for another edition of one of our favorite departments here on Real Time, explaining jokes to idiots. where as a public service, I break down jokes for the humor impaired. Not that I have anyone particular in mind. Now, I know we're all sick of talking about the slap, but I'm sorry, one more thing needs to be said. Comedians have been under attack for quite some time, and I need to stick up for my tribe. This war on jokes must end.
Let's talk about the Kevin Hart example for a second, because it's the clearest illustration of the clown world we're in. The guy loses a hosting gig over jokes from the past. Not because he committed a crime. Not because he hurt someone physically. Not because he stole or cheated or assaulted anybody. Words. Old jokes. Meanwhile, the Oscars had a moment where a comedian gets smacked on live TV. And the show basically just keeps rolling. Like, anyway, best cinematography. Make that make sense.
Will Smith didn't get kicked out of the Oscars for going Ike Turner on Chris, but Kevin Hart got kicked out of hosting it for a joke. Who are these people who say cancel culture isn't a real thing? Just among comedians who've gotten fired and lost gigs for exercising their freedom.
This is the part where people love to jump in and say cancel culture isn't real. Okay, then what do we call it when comedians lose tours, lose specials, lose sponsorships, lose hosting gigs, and lose entire careers because a mob decides their joke didn't pass the latest purity test? What do we call it when people publicly pressure companies to drop someone until the company caves, even if the offense is clearly being twisted on purpose? If you don't like the word cancel, fine. Call it social punishment culture. Call it digital exile. Call them online tribunals. Whatever helps you sleep at night. But don't pretend it's imaginary when the receipts are everywhere. And the Oscar slap is a perfect little time capsule of how it works. Because the most revealing detail wasn't even the smack itself. It was what happened right before it. The laugh. Will Smith laughed at the joke at first. He looked like everyone else, amused, relaxed, and enjoying the roast energy that has always been part of award shows. Then he glanced over. He saw Jada's face, and suddenly his entire body language changed.
And importantly, Chris's joke was received as funny. As evidenced by the audience and Will Smith laughing. And this is the moment where we got to see a live-action, real-time encapsulation of how cancel culture works. Look at what happens next. Jada shoots her husband a look. Let's slow the tape down to capture this moment. There. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
The laugh evaporated. The switch flipped. And within seconds, he wasn't reacting to the joke anymore. He was reacting to the social pressure in the room. The look, the silent, you better do something. The moment where the vibe becomes, your initial reaction was wrong. Correct it. Perform the correct outrage. If you've ever been in a comedy club, you've seen this exact phenomenon in miniature. People laugh, genuinely laugh, and then you'll hear someone wait until the laughter dies down to yell. That's not funny. And it's always funny how they don't shout it during the laughter. They wait because it's not about the joke actually being funny or not. It's about control. It's about being the hall monitor of the room. It's about bending everyone else into the approved reaction.
Before this moment, Will is laughing because he hasn't yet found out that his original genuine reaction is wrong and that he should conform to a different view. And he's the one who's being manly? I've seen the same syndrome happen in comedy clubs. Woke hecklers who literally have to wait for the laughter to die down before they yell, "That's not funny!"
And this is where things get dangerous. Not dangerous like words or violence, but dangerous like we're training society to reward intimidation. Because if the rule becomes, if you don't like a joke, you can punish the comedian, then comedy dies. Not because comedians can't be funny anymore, but because they can't take risks. And comedy without risk is just corporate small talk. It's the verbal version of plain oatmeal. No spice, No flavor, no point. And Bill Maher's breakdown of the G.I. Jane joke is important because it highlights the other massive problem. People pretending not to understand humor on purpose. Chris Rock made a quick off-the-cuff comparison. G.I. Jane 2, a pop culture reference, a shaved head comparison. That's it. But suddenly it gets treated like this targeted act of cruelty. Like Rock walked onto that stage with a villain monologue and a PowerPoint presentation titled How to Destroy Jada Pinkett Smith. Come on.
And then Chris made what in the business is known as a some is like some other joke. He said to Jada Smith, "Jada can't wait for G.I. Jane 2, recalling the late 90s movie starring Demi Moore." That's it. That's the joke. You remind me of some other beautiful, buzz-cutted movie star. It wasn't an alopecia joke any more than the one about the chicken crossing the road is about bird flu.
And here's what always gets lost in these debates. If we judge comedy only by the most offended interpretation possible, then no joke is safe ever because you can always take something and twist it into a crime if you try hard enough. You can always say, well, what you really meant was, and then assign intentions to someone like you can read minds. That's not justice. That's fanfiction. Also, let's not ignore the fact that roast culture has been baked into Hollywood forever. These award shows have always included celebrities getting teased. Regina Hall and Amy Schumer joked around that same night. People got poked at. That's the deal. You're rich. You're famous. You live a life most humans can't even imagine. The trade-off is once in a while a comedian makes a joke about you on TV, and you smile like a grown-up.
Not an insult, although insult humor is also a staple of comedy. And in fact, an example of insulting someone's looks was on display that night when Regina Hall said, "We've been dealing with COVID for 2 years. It's been really hard on people." And Amy Schumer said, "Yeah, just look at Timothée Chalamet," and they cut to J.K. Simmons. Who made a face a lot like the one Jada would make later on. But that's where it ended. It's called being a good sport.
And it's wild how rare that maturity is becoming because the adult response to a joke you don't like is you don't laugh. Maybe you roll your eyes. Maybe you talk about it later. Maybe you even clap back with words like a functioning person. But physically attacking someone and then being treated like you just gave a powerful speech at the United Nations. That's the part that made people feel sick. Not just the slap, but the applause for the slap. Jim Carrey saying he would have sued for $200 million wasn't just a number tossed out for drama. It was him saying there has to be a line. Because when there are no consequences, you normalize the behavior. And once you normalize it, you invite more of it. Today it's a slap at the Oscars. Tomorrow it's someone rushing a stage at a stand-up show because a joke hit too close to home. And then what? We start issuing trigger warnings before punchlines. Do comedians need security escorts like they're performing in a war zone? Here's where it gets even more absurd. The same people who insist comedy should never punch down will still cheer when the mob punches a comedian into unemployment. The same people who preach empathy will have none for the person being publicly dragged. And the same industry that claims it's all about art and expression becomes weirdly authoritarian the second the expression doesn't match the approved script.
But that was not a good moment. It cast a pall over everybody's shining moment last night. You know, a lot of people worked really hard to get to that place and to have their moment in the sun and to get their award for the really hard work they did. And it is no mean feat to go through all the stuff you have to go through when you're nominated for an Oscar. It's a gauntlet of devotion that you have to do. And you know, it was just a selfish moment that cast a pall over the whole thing.
That's why the Hollywood is collapsing idea resonates with so many people. Not because movies are going to stop being made tomorrow morning, but because Hollywood's cultural influence is fading. People don't trust it. People don't see it as aspirational anymore. It used to be the place that made fun of the powerful. Now it feels like the place that protects the powerful. As long as they're on the correct team, someone who reacts with violence. You can't keep demanding everyone be sensitive while rewarding someone who reacts with violence. You can't keep pretending you're champions of free speech while treating comedians like landmines that need to be defused. And before someone says, "So you're saying people should never be offended?" No, people get offended. That's life. The world is not a padded room. The point is, offense is not an emergency. Being offended is not a blank check to punish other people. You don't get to rewrite the rules of civilized behavior because you didn't like a joke. Uncomfortable truths without tearing each other apart. And when you choke that off, you don't create a kinder culture. You create a more fragile one. A culture where everyone walks on eggshells, where every sentence feels like a potential career-ending incident, and where nobody says what they actually think. And if you think that leads to progress, I've got a bridge to sell you.
You know, that insult is going to last a very long time. If you want to yell from the audience and disapprove or show a disapproval or say something on Twitter or whatever, you do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
No, I agree. I think we all agree on that. I just thought, Jim, that it escalated to that. You know what I mean? That it escalated to that level.
It didn't escalate. It came out of nowhere because Will has something going on inside him that's frustrated, and I wish him the best. I really do. I don't.
So yeah, the slap mattered not because it was shocking. Celebrity drama is always shocking. It mattered because it revealed a hierarchy of acceptable behavior. It showed that Hollywood will punish speech faster than it punishes violence. It showed how quickly people will abandon principles to protect status. And it showed how the line keeps moving depending on who's involved. And here's the question I want you to sit with. What kind of culture are we building? If jokes are treated like crimes and actual crimes are treated like complicated moments, what does that do to creativity? What does that do to art? What does that do to regular people watching at home, learning what society rewards? If you've made it this far, drop a comment. Do you think the bigger problem is Hollywood's hypocrisy or the broader culture that rewards outrage? And be honest, have you noticed yourself laughing at something and then second-guessing it because you're worried about what it means? Because that right there, that's the whole game. And look, I'm not saying comedians are perfect angels who should never be criticized. Comedians bomb. Comedians cross lines. Comedians can be lazy, mean, or just not funny. But the solution to bad comedy has always been the same. Don't laugh. Don't buy tickets. Criticize it. Debate it. Move on. The solution has never been to destroy their life. And it definitely has never been hit by them on stage. If Hollywood wants to regain any of its credibility, it has to relearn some basic stuff. Accountability matters, intent matters, proportion matters, and the idea that grown adults should be allowed to tell jokes without triggering an institutional meltdown, that matters too. So yeah, this war on jokes needs to end. Not because every joke is sacred, but because a society that can't laugh is a society that's already cracking. And if the most powerful entertainment industry on earth can't handle a punchline without turning it into a moral crisis, then honestly, maybe it doesn't deserve to be the cool club anymore. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with that friend who still thinks cancel culture isn't real. And seriously, comment below with your take because I want to see where people land on this. Where's the line between accountability and censorship?